Mark. Yeah. Yeah. Tennessee.
At its China factory in Shanghai. Tesla was also offering a huge discount now. It upped the discount, it doubled the discount from $3,750 up to $7,500 on its Model 3 and the Model Y. Here's Bloomberg's Asha Day.
All of this taken together is really fueling concerns that demand is or may be faltering for EVs, which are actually more expensive than typical gas-driven cars.
So if you go back a little more than a year, Tesla was over $400, and as mentioned, now falling down to that level of just $109.10. Put it all together, down about 70% or so, as the value of some of these distractions and the big sell-off in some of these disruptor companies, and also Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter. And Rish, investors just fearing that he's spending too much time on Twitter.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? And it's proving to be a distraction, and perhaps there are other parts of his business, sprawling business empire, which are also feeling it as well. Let's take a look at Apple shares as they close at their lowest levels since June 2021. That's partly due to an ongoing sell-off of big tech names, I should say, as concerns grow here over iPhone supply and the key holiday period production appearing to be stopped at an iPhone plant in China, which has caused a shortfall in supply. That stock on the way down 1.4%, and it's its third straight negative session there, Brian.
5 minutes past the hour, it's time for global news. The public in China is showing some mixed emotions about COVID-0's sudden end. Let's get to Ed Baxter in San Francisco in the 960 News from Ed.
Yeah, exactly, Brian. Some people are planning their first trips abroad in 3 years, but of course there are some very concerned about the rapid spread of infections. In essence, the two very different pictures of obviously trying to get back to some form of normal, and then with a strain on hospitals. So this comes with China officially reopening its borders to the world. These are the last of the COVID curbs. Inbound travelers no longer to be subject to quarantine from January 8th. Now, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that the airline bookings out of China have soared. Singapore, South Korea, Hong Kong, Japan, the top picks. Japan, by the way, has announced it will require tests for visitors from China. The rest of the globe is watching as well, wondering what the ripple effects will be. Bloomberg's Jordan Fabian reports the White House is basically staying mum to this point.
There are now fewer rules for people from the U.S. to enter China. They're not necessarily going to do anything, even though there's still a rising caseload there. But that being said, I mean, it is a sign that China is bringing down these measures, and that it'll be easier for people from the U.S. to travel there.
Yeah, U.S. has ordered travel restrictions in the past, but nothing so far now. Taiwan has announced it is extending its compulsory military service to 1 year from the current 4 months. President Tsai Ing-wen saying that it was an extremely difficult decision, but necessary due to China's expansionist activities in the region. Tsai says it is necessary for Taiwan's survival. South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol calling for stronger air defenses, high-tech stealth drones, while apologizing for failing to shoot down North Korean drones across the border for the first time in 5 years. And North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says the new set of goals for the people's self-reliant defense capability. Kim says he wants to move up the timetable in 2023. The entire state of New York is under federal weather declaration of emergency. President Biden approving the request from New York Governor Kathy Hochul.
We have been through a lot of wars together, and this blizzard is the one for the ages. Certainly it is the blizzard of the century.
The declaration frees up help and funding from FEMA. Massive snowstorms that have inundated much of the rest of the country with snow as well are causing a very unusual power problem in the Northeast. Bloomberg's Madison Mills in New York City says people are being asked to cut back on power usage.
We saw December 23rd, 24th, and 25th a decline of 14 billion cubic feet. That number is bigger than the entire U.S. daily export of gas. So just huge losses there.
Madison says some areas in the northeast have had to revert to using coal to replace the shortage of natural gas. Southwest Air is still having problems with flight cancellations and moving people around. While they're still making some slow progress, the airline says already has canceled over 60% of its flights tomorrow and says some form of cancellation will continue for the next several days. Bloomberg's Leon Island says the Department of Transportation really now wants to look into this.
One thing that DOT said they really wanted to look at is Southwest Customer Service Plan. You know, the airlines are supposed to have plans in place for when there are and they sort of want to look at, did you actually have a good enough plan for something like this?
Along with Southwest Business a new system that recently installed to get flight crews to assign positions failed. The pilots and flight crew were not able to get into the system to find out where they should report. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg. All right, Brian?
All right, thanks very much. At the time, 9 minutes past the hour. Let's get to our guest, Terry Spath, CIO at Zumo Wealth. Terry, thanks very much. I do want to talk about the big picture here, but I want to get to China perhaps in a moment. If we look at the big picture, this was a terrible year for investing. It was probably the worst year ever for trading bonds, and it's really been a tough year for the stock market, roughly down 20% for the S&P 500 global stocks. You don't normally get 2 down years in a row, but when you do, I think it's happened 4 times since probably going back to the Great Depression. The second year is kind of a doozy, so we're wise to be mindful of that and stay cautious here.
Yeah, hi Brian, and Happy New Year. Thanks for having me on during this challenging week for so many travelers and so many investors. It has been a disaster for any sort of buy and hold 60-40, stock bond investor that's out there. As you pointed out, you've got stocks down almost 20%, bonds down. I think probably their worst year in history. So what is an investor to do in a time like this? I mean, at face value, that headline of, the second year after a bad year, is a scary one, but that's not our base case scenario looking forward. I don't think that there's a strong enough reason just because we had the past 12 months being poor. I think that's a lower version of recency bias, meaning like what happened just recently is what's going to continue to happen, and we don't see that as our base case for 2023 at this stage.
So tell me, what needs to change then in order to change that philosophy that you hold?
Thanks for shot. I mean, our philosophy is a little bit out of consensus in that we're not still in this debate over whether or not we're going to have a recession. We think we've probably had one. We might be in one already, whether or not that's been officially declared or not. And when that's the case, you don't want to continue to sell stocks. In particular, you need to buy sort of during a recession in order to participate in the bull markets that always occur after a downturn. So our view is that inflation will come in, or will come in fast because of what the Fed's been doing, and that we are in a recession or will be shortly. And the question is really how deep that recession will be, or how shallow. And if we're in a more shallow one, which we do think, then that's the time to start sharpening your pencil.
Okay, so you got me. I want to put money in, put it to work, but I'm trying to decide: do I want to stay very cautious and pick, consumer staples and high dividend stocks and maybe some utilities and that sort of thing, or do I want to buy the most bombed out companies? We featured Tesla this morning, down 70-odd% or so year to date. Do I want to go that direction because the gains, when they come there, they will be probably pretty strong?
Yeah, I think you're making a good point, that when the things that have gotten the most beat up are often the ones you want to look at most closely. I mean, I think Tesla being sort of a little bit of a separate story from that general conversation, that's just, that's a different, well, we can go down that path if you'd like. But where we think things make sense right now is where there's still good value. There's actually still good value in energy. There's still good value in healthcare names that are out there. And we're starting to get interested in some of the international, particularly emerging markets that are out there, because if rates do start to come down, if inflation does come down, you're going to see a weakening dollar, and that does start to present a tailwind for a lot of the emerging market stocks that are out there. So right now, we're not looking for some of the high flyers that have just gotten beat up, that probably needed to get beat up. That's not what we think makes a lot of sense, although if you want to gamble on that you can do that. But I think that some of the value sectors that are out there are still where we were putting money to work right now, where we have dry powder.
Terry, is also, that based upon, to some extent, the hope that the dollar does remain strong, but also, of course, you could be making money if the dollar does weaken in emerging markets. But where do you look for a particular